9 spine-chilling babysitting stories. Discover the sinister truth behind haunted nights of fear. Jenna, a 19-year-old college student, picked up one of her favorite babysitting gigs in the peaceful suburb of Maplewood. The Johnsons were like family to her. They trusted her with their 2 little ones, Jamie and Sophie, as they flew out for an evening event. That night, the air outside was warm and still, and Jenna figured it would be just another routine evening. As the parents waved goodbye, she settled onto the couch, popcorn in hand, feeling the comforting glow of the TV warm her. But when the phone rang at 8 o'clock, everything started to change. The caller ID showed an unknown number, and panic danced in her chest. "Hello?" she asked tentatively. A raspy voice whispered her name before abruptly hanging up. Was this some sick joke? She convinced herself it was nothing more than a prank, trying to shake off the discomfort creeping into her mind. Settling back down, Jenna felt fake reassurance. The TV flickered in the background, crickets chirping gently outside. But just as she let her guard down, she heard a soft thud from upstairs. Her heart raced, nervously pounding against her ribcage. It's nothing, she told herself. Yet she couldn't shake the feeling that someone or something was watching. She turned to the kids, who had initially seemed drowsy. Now, their faces had shifted expressions dark and unsettling. Jamie stared at her with wide, consuming eyes. "Jenna," he whispered, his voice barely audible, "do you want to hear a secret?" Panic clawed at her throat. They started sharing stories, dark and twisted tales of traditions in their family, a history drenched in shadows. Each word felt like a cold hand gripping her spine. The innocent sweetness of their laughter twisted in her ears. It morphed into something sinister, echoing against the walls of this once comforting home. The popcorn in her hands crumbled to dust as she thought about calling their parents, not knowing if they'd blame her for being paranoid. With her heart racing, Jenna stepped outside for air, stepping onto the abandoned street. The moon cast long shadows, and loneliness settled around her like fog. She pulled out her phone, desperate to text a friend, but it trembled in her hands, a call from the same unknown number. "Run," the voice whispered. A chill shot down her spine, her instincts screaming that eerie warnings were meant to be taken seriously. Feeling the walls of the house closing in on her, Jenna rushed back inside, glancing back at the empty street. "This isn't funny," she muttered. She hesitated, thinking of the kids when she entered their room. The sight froze her blood. They sat upright, their eyes no longer filled with innocent fear, but with a chilling certainty, as if they were connected to forces beyond her comprehension. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." "Jenna," Sophie said, her voice a mere breath. They always hide, the words hung in the air, thick with dread. The shadows seemed to shift and pulse around her, and every instinct told her to flee. She turned to the door, her blood rushing in her ears. Behind her, the children began to hum a haunting lullaby, one that echoed through generations, steeped in darkness. As the air thickened with an unspeakable tension and the walls whispered of family secrets unknown, Jenna realized the true horror lay not in the shadows lurking outside but in the heart of the home itself. Panic surged through her, urging her to act, yet the children remained there, 2 innocent faces twisted by ancient, unfathomable knowledge. Just as she pushed towards the door, a slow, low chuckle crept from the depths of the shadows. The children turned to her, and for the first time, she sensed real danger. In their eyes flickered a darkness so profound that Jenna's instincts screamed this night was only just beginning. Jenna's pulse roared in her ears, drowning out the lullaby as she stumbled backward. The children's smiles twisted, their eyes glinted with an unsettling hunger, shadows of mischief wrapping around their innocent forms. "You shouldn't leave," Jamie said, his tone deceptively sweet. "They don't like it when you leave." Panic took the reins of Jenna's mind, racing, thrumming insistently. She glared at the door, the only barrier between her and the steadily darkening night. Something thudded upstairs again, more profound this time, as if a heavy weight was being dragged along the floorboards. The children's laughter morphed into something deeper, a rhythmic chant that thrummed in her bones. They weren't just telling stories anymore, they were engaging in something far older and terrible. "Stop it!" Jenna shouted, her voice cracking as she lunged toward the door. She couldn't bear the cradle of darkness that wrapped around her now. But as she reached for the doorknob, Jamie suddenly shot up from his spot, blocking her path. "You can't go outside," he said, eyes wide and shimmering with an unnatural light. "They'll come for you." "What are you talking about?" Jenna cried, stepping back, her mind scrambling for answers. This wasn't what babysitting had ever felt like. The heavy atmosphere felt like thick smoke, choking her with fear. Sophie tilted her head, shifting her gaze toward the window, and Jenna followed. Outside, the shadows were alive. They danced just beyond the glass, crawling toward the facade of the house, flickering like flames threatening to consume. Trees swayed violently, bending as if pulled by unseen hands. The air hummed, charged with a foreboding energy that sent tremors rippling through her body. "Call your parents," Jenna demanded, trying to kindle a flicker of rationality in the thick atmosphere. "They'll be back soon." But instead, both children giggled and shook their heads, their movements slow and deliberate, as if mocking her bravery. "They can't hear you," Jamie said, a cruel twist gracing his lips. "They're too far away. And besides, they would never believe you." Desperation clawed at her throat. She fumbled for her phone. No signal. It felt like claws were scraping at the fundamental fabric of reality within this house. She could feel it in her bones, a chilling truth seeping into her mind: the parents would never arrive to save her. As she backed away toward the living room, the echoes of the children's chants began to form shapes. They were conjuring something, a whisper of dread floating just above the ground, stretching out dark fingers towards her. The lights flickered ominously, casting haunting shadows that warped the room as familiar features. "What do you want?" Jenna yelled, desperate. Her hands trembled, urging her to find anything she could use to protect herself. The children erupted in laughter, the sound like glass shattering on concrete. It was far too joyous, too loud against the oppressive atmosphere surrounding her. "To play," they chimed in unison. "You must play with us." Before Jenna could think, the shadows deepened, swirling and coalescing into figures she could almost recognize, even her own reflection twisted, molded by fear into a grotesque mask of terror. As the children beckoned her closer, the spinning vortex of shadows closed in a wall of cold air and blinding darkness. And then, silence, thick, suffocating silence. The thudding upstairs had stopped. Jenna's heart was the only sound in this realm of nightmarish stillness. It felt as if reality itself had collapsed, waiting for her next move, and dread rose within her like bile. She glanced at the children. Their smiles had faded, replaced by icy stares that penetrated deeply, as if looking into the very essence of her being. "Do you see them?" said Sophie, her tiny voice quivering with unfurling terror. "They never leave." The floorboards creaked ominously behind her. Jenna turned slowly, terrified of what she might discover. One thought echoed in her mind: could she escape the house before whatever lurked within it claimed her too? The darkness shivered, and with it came the ever-looming sense that escape was just a thin thread away from being irrevocably cut. What was waiting for her on the other side? Jenna's breath quickened as she turned, heart pounding like a drum in her ears. The darkness felt alive, pulsating like a living thing, and each creak of the ancient house seemed to draw nearer. She faced the shadows thickening behind her. It was no longer just silence. Whispers crept into her mind. They were words she couldn't comprehend, a language older than time itself, and it beckoned her closer. In a panic, she darted her gaze to the window, desperate for any glimpse of light or safety that the outside world could offer. But all she saw were more shadows, pooling in concentration like ominous ink, growing heavier and more suffocating. The voice of Jamie sliced through her thoughts, chilling her spine. "You cannot hide from them," he said, eyes shimmering with a menacing light. It's time to join us. Join you? She stammered, trying to mask her fear behind bravado. This is a game. You're just playing a trick. Games have rules, Sophie chimed in with an unsettling sing-song lilt. And you don't know them. Jenna felt a surge of anger, desperate to reclaim her control. No! I'm in charge here. I'm the babysitter. But those words fell like dust among the encroaching shadows, meaningless and hollow. Suddenly, a loud bang reverberated from upstairs, sending a jolt of icy terror through her. It was louder, closer. Jenna's instinct kicked in. She had to explore. Perhaps there was a way to break this twisted spell, to find the truth lurking in the heart of the house. She swallowed hard and forced herself toward the stairs, each step creaking beneath her weight. The atmosphere thickened as she climbed, shadows crawling along the walls like twisted hands reaching for her. The children's laughter faded into the background, replaced by the sound of something shuffling above, barely audible but persistently unnerving. At the top, a door stood ajar, its hinges whispering secrets. Breathing deeply, Jenna pushed it open and stepped inside a dimly lit room that felt foreign. Each item, the bed, the toys scattered across the floor, the cobwebs hanging from the corners, felt steeped in a grim history she could almost taste in the stale air. A faded photograph sat on the nightstand. Jenna picked it up, her pulse quickening as she recognized the smiling faces. The parents of the children, yes, but behind them, blurred in the background, a shadowy figure loomed, indistinct yet menacing. It watched her with eyes that seemed to bore into her very soul. Then, a low growl rumbled from beneath the bed. Jenna's heart lurched. Fear tightened around her throat as she crouched down to look. Nothing. Just the shadows. Just the silence again. Help, a voice rasped, trailing off like smoke. It wasn't Sophie or Jamie. This was a voice full of sorrow. Help us. The hairs on her arms stood erect. Jenna's instincts screamed at her to flee, but she felt trapped, rooted by a blend of horror and curiosity. She had to know what lay beneath the bed. She reached out, hesitantly brushing her fingers along the floorboards. Outside, the wind howled, creating a mournful symphony of warning. Help us, the voice repeated, more urgent. And suddenly, she wanted to scream, to run, to escape the grip of whatever had taken residence in this cursed house. Then she heard footsteps behind her. Not just a thud, but a shuffling, dragging sound that carried dread. Cold dread. Jenna turned slowly, heart hammering against her ribcage. In that moment, with the darkness threatening to reclaim her, with the spectral voice and the all-too-real presence inching closer, she realized she was the one in the game and the rules were about to change. What was it that they were begging to be saved from? And who, or what, had joined the chilling play? As the shadows pooled at her feet, Jenna felt stone-cold terror. It was time to understand the whispers beckoning from below, and discover the cost of knowledge in this house where dreams twisted into nightmares. Jenna's heart raced as she spun around, eyes wide with panic. The dragging noise grew stronger, clawing its way across the floorboards, closing the gap between her and whatever lay behind her. She clenched the photograph tightly, the smiling faces now a cruel reminder of the innocence lost in this malevolent place. Help us, the voice echoed again, more compelling, the words twisting in her stomach. It wasn't just a plea, it was an accusation, a demand. A chill slithering through her bones urged her to flee, to escape the darkened room and the horrors lurking within. But her feet felt like lead, roots entangling her where she stood. As she locked eyes with the empty space beneath the bed, shadows deepened, stretching toward her like specters eager to ensnare. The growling morphed into a low, shuddering sound that reverberated in the pit of her stomach. "Get away from there!" shouted Jamie. His voice carried a mixture of fear and urgency, snapping Jenna back to reality. He burst into the room, his small frame blocking the threshold. "Don't listen! It's a trick! Trick or not, we need to help! Someone's in trouble!" Jenna's voice trembled, but she held her ground. Jamie's face twisted in disbelief, and for the first time, she saw a flicker of panic in his eyes. "No! You don't understand," he pleaded, his expression shadowed by the darkness enveloping the room. Jenna took a step toward Jamie, trying to make sense of the chaos tumbling inside her. They're calling out for help. We can't just ignore it. Before she could take another step, Sophie slid into the room, her presence chilling the air. Help them? Do you even know what that means? She laughed softly, but it dripped with malice. It means playing a game. A game you can't win. With that, the room plunged deeper into darkness. Shadows lunged forward. Jenna stumbled back against the wall, breathless. Sophie, stop! Jamie shouted, fear transforming his voice. He moved closer to Jenna, but even he couldn't escape the tightening grip of the chamber. The air thickened, charged with a palpable dread that clung to their skin. Help us, came the whisper again, urgent and desperate. Jenna felt her head swimming, the air thick like molasses. She squeezed her eyes shut, trying to ignore it. Another bang sounded from downstairs, the walls rattling as if the house itself was awakening, angry and alive. The wailing of the wind shrieked through the cracks, amplifying the chaos. Jenna opened her eyes to find shadows retreating momentarily, reforming into shapes. Faces appeared, their eyes hollow. They reached towards her. Help us! No! She screamed, forcing herself to break the trance. We need to get out. Now! Where? Sophie taunted, her smile wide as if relishing the fear. There's nowhere to go. They'll follow you, just like they followed us. An icy breeze swept through the room, chilling Jenna to the bone. She caught the reflection of the shadowy figure from the photograph in a cracked mirror across the room, its presence a malignant specter pressing against her mind. Desperation clawed at her the children. She had to protect them. Come on! Jenna shouted, grabbing Jamie's hand and pulling him toward the door. But as they rushed past, Sophie let out a manic laugh, the kind that echoed with despair. You think you can escape? They're part of you now! The shadows erupted, swirling around Jenna like a storm, sending a wall of cold through her veins. As they barreled back down the stairs, faint laughter echoed hollowly in the air, crawling under her skin. Help us! Cried the voice, slipping through the gaps of her resolve, wrapping around her mind like a serpent. Jenna pushed Jamie ahead of her, determination surging within her chest. They had to reach the front door. The noise jarring, footsteps charging in pursuit. Every ounce of dread turned her thoughts to chaos. She was losing grasp, but this wasn't a game, this was survival. With every step toward freedom, the shadows pulled, desperate to claim what was theirs. What awaits them on the other side of that door? Would they escape, or would they join the whispers forever, lost in a game with rules she had yet to learn? The hallway stretched endlessly before them, the air thick with a suffocating fear. Jenna's heart pounded, echoing like a war drum. She tugged Jamie onward, his small hands slipping through hers as a gust of ice-cold wind swept around them. Don't look back, she urged, her voice trembling. But with each step, the sinister whispers intensified, a chorus of voices wailing in torment. Help us, the words felt like stones lodged in her throat, dragging her down. She knew she had to keep moving, but the pull of the shadows was almost hypnotic, wrapping around her ankles, as though the house itself was determined to snatch them back. Jenna! Jamie's voice was a strangled cry, a warning. Jenna barely glanced back, and in that moment she saw at the shadow, no longer a mere silhouette, but a deeply etched figure, swirling toward them with purpose, its face obscured in darkness. It beckoned with long, bony fingers, as if offering a twisted invitation. A primal scream burned in her chest. We have to hurry. The front door loomed ahead, just within reach. They had to break free from this nightmare. With everything inside her screaming not to look, Jenna dared a final glance. She met the empty eyes of the figure, feeling a chill seep deep into her bones. We're not yours! She screamed, forcing herself to run faster. The door was close now, its wood stained and swollen from age. Jenna pushed against it, skin against splintered wood, desperately forcing it open. It shuddered and groaned, but the shadows surged, gathering like a storm on the other side. What if we can't get out? Jamie whispered, voice shaking with the weight of despair. We will. Jenna shot back, though doubt gnawed at the edges of her confidence. She slammed her shoulder against the door, desperation doubling her strength. The door burst open with a violent thrust. Cold air hit her face like a slap, filling her lungs, and she gasped at the sudden, bitter scent of the night. But the relief was short-lived. On the front porch stood a figure hunched in shadow, silhouetted by the moonlight. Jenna's heart plummeted. Another ghost? Another trick? Who are you? She called out, her voice shaky. Silence stretched, thick and suffocating. Then the figure stirred. Help us, it echoed softly, eyes glinting like a predator's. This voice was different, closer, filled with a dark allure that preyed on her instincts. Join us, no. We want tea, Jenna shouted, pulling Jamie behind her. Before she could react, a flash of movement darted past her Sophie. The girl lunged forward, laughing as if catching a prize. The shadows surged forward, filling the frame of the door with smoky figures eager to drag them back into the void. Jenna's instincts flared. Run! She barked, locking her grip on Jamie's arm, pulling him with fierce determination into the night. But as they fled, the whispers turned frantic, twisting with rage. You can't leave us! You belong to the game. They tore down the path, desperate breaths mingling with the rising wind. Jenna nailed down their destination. It had to be the neighbor's house, the only safe haven from this terror, but something was wrong. The darkness behind them roared, thunderous footsteps pursuing. The figure stood still amidst the chaos, its outstretched hand beckoning, urging them to look back, to surrender. No, no, no! Jenna gasped, adrenaline propelling them forward. But the shadows danced wildly, spreading like fingers over the ground to ensnare them still. It was as if the whole world warped around them, the air thickening like a noxious fog. Where was the light? Where was safety? Would they reach the neighbor's house, or would the very ground beneath them swallow them whole? With each stride, Jenna's resolve deepened, but doubt gnawed at her. The house behind them moaned, a living entity full of malice. What if we can't escape? She thought. Suddenly, a blinding light erupted from the direction of the neighbor's house, pulsating in rhythmic waves. Help us! The haunting chorus rang loud and clear. They stumbled toward it, hope and terror colliding into a maelstrom. As they approached, the warmth enveloped them but hung thick with foreboding. What awaited them in the glow beyond? Was it salvation, or the beginning of something even darker? Help us echoed into the night. They had to find out. What secrets lay hidden in the light? And would it be enough to counter the shadows stalking them? The light pulsed like a heartbeat, drawing Jenna and Jamie closer, but every step felt like wading through molasses. They crossed the threshold into the neighbor's yard, the tall grass whispering with each gust of wind, as if it too had a warning to share. Jenna. Jamie's voice was small, filled with doubt. What if it's worse? She could barely breathe, her instincts screaming at her to run, but the shadows kept coming. The figures lurked at the edge of the light, stretching and twisting, shapes that seemed to melt into the landscape, merging with the darkness that clawed at their heels. Stay close, she whispered, fighting against the rising panic in her voice, pulling Jamie tight against her. But fear danced in his wide eyes, uncertainty blooming as they neared the glowing sanctuary. The glow enveloped them, warm but unsettling. They reached a porch, the light spilling from a cracked door, revealing an interior that shimmered oddly. Old furniture glistened with an unnatural sheen, cracked porcelain dolls gazed with eerily lifelike eyes, and in the center of the room, a flickering lantern cast flickers that resembled slow-moving spirits swirling through the air. Is anyone here? Jenna called out, but only silence answered. The neighbor's house smelled of mold and something acrid, a rotten sweetness that made her stomach turn. And then she heard it, a faint melody, a sing-song lullaby echoing from the back of the house. The kind of tune that pulled at her heartstrings, sweet and familiar yet twisted. Help us, it echoed again, more insistent. Jamie whimpered, his grip tightening on her arm. I don't want to go in there, neither do I. But we want to let them catch us, she reasoned, every instinct urging her to protect him, to fight through whatever darkness awaited. Suddenly, the door creaked wider, revealing a dim hallway shrouded in shadows, tinged with a cold that sent shivers racing down her spine. The melody lured her in, each note a thread pulling her deeper into the dwelling. Jenna hesitated, but the whispers and the laughter outside seemed to push her forward, urging her to surrender to the insanity woven into the fabric of the house. They stepped inside, and the door swung shut behind them with a thunderous boom that echoed in the stillness. Darkness enveloped them, a blanket that wrapped tightly around every surface, clinging to their skin. Jenna blinked, adjusting her eyes to the gloom, heart racing. "Where do we go?" Jamie whispered, voice filled with a mix of fear and curiosity. "Just stay behind me," Jenna replied, her throat dry, pulse hammering in her ears. Each shadow seemed to watch, waiting for them to falter, to crawl back into the nightmares out in the yard. A faint glint caught her eye from a corner of the room, a mirror, tarnished and cracked. In its shadowy reflection, she saw something behind her, distant and grotesque, a figure lurking just out of sight, its features shifting, changing, a face made of the very nightmares they were escaping. "Jenna! Look out!" Jamie yelled, and she turned, just in time to see the shadows coalesce into swirling tendrils of darkness reaching for them. "Run!" Jenna shouted, her heart racing as she shoved Jamie ahead, their feet pounding against the floorboards. But the walls began to close in, the melody morphing into screams, pulling at their sanity. "You can't leave! You belong to us!" The chorus yelled, voices rising into a shrill crescendo. With adrenaline surging, Jenna pressed forward, searching for an exit as panic clawed at her chest. But where was the door? Where was the safety of outside? A chill raced through her as she realized the walls felt alive, vibrating with energy, coaxing them to stay. They were trapped in an endless loop of darkness, surrounded by figures that watched, hungry for their fear. "Jenna, I'm scared," Jamie cried, his small voice cracking, the shadows encroaching. Then she saw it, a narrow staircase spiraling up, a sliver of hope shining through. "We have to go up." But as they fled toward the stairs, the darkness twisted, rising like a flood, grabbing at their ankles and pulling them back. Would they escape the clutches of the whispers? Or would the shadows finally claim them for their own? In a last desperate push, Jenna lunged for the staircase, heart pounding, breath hitching. The melody faded into a cacophony. As they climbed, the weight of the shadows pressed down. Could the light of dawn break through this abyss? Or would the night spiral on, deeper and darker? The answer was just ahead, but uncertainty gnawed at her with every step. What awaited them at the top? And would they find hope or a nightmare waiting to unfold? The staircase creaked ominously under their hurried steps, each groan echoing like a countdown to something dire. Jenna could feel Jamie's breaths quickening beside her, panic building like a storm cloud. She clasped his hand tighter, determined not to lose him in this nightmare. "Don't look back," she urged, fear rippling through her voice. The shadows writhed below, their whispers escalating into a dissonant symphony of despair. "Just keep climbing." The higher they went, the colder it became, a biting chill that gnawed at them through the floorboards. Jenna strained her ears, trying to discern whether the melody persisted, but it was drowned out by the cacophony of sinister whispers that clawed at the edges of her sanity. "You're ours," they breathed, merging with the sound of their heartbeats. At the top, a door stood ajar, an inviting sliver of light spilling through the crack. Jenna hesitated, looking back down the staircase. The shadows roiled together, a dark tide threatening to consume them. "We can't stop, we can't stay here," Jamie's voice trembled. She nodded, pushing the door wider, and tumbled into the room. It was small, cluttered with dust-laden furniture and cobwebs, but the brightness from a flickering bulb illuminated a mirror, similar to the one below, hanging crookedly on the wall. As Jenna stepped in, she caught her reflection, but it was wrong. Her eyes gleamed not with fear but with a dark hunger. She stumbled back, horrified. "Jamie, don't look in the mirror!" He was already moving closer, drawn to the reflection like a moth to flame. "What's wrong, Jenna?" His voice was curious, innocent. "Jamie, please!" The urgency in her heart ignited. She lunged and grabbed his arm, pulling him back as the mirror flickered, showing not only their reflection but the shadows thrumming beneath the surface. "No! Don't touch it!" Jenna shouted as she yanked him further away. But something within the glass shimmered, revealing scenes other children, trapped like them, their hollow eyes pleading for release. The whispers grew louder, echoing in her mind. "You can't leave, join us." Behold, just then, the door behind them slammed shut with a violent bang, plunging the room into icy darkness. Panic surged as the shadows from the mirror stretched and curled, reaching for them, tendrils of despair. "Jenna! What do we do?" Jamie cried, scraping against the wall, searching for an escape. "Find another way out." She stood her ground, focusing on the room. There had to be a window or something. The walls pulsed as if they were breathing, the air thickening. Suddenly, a sound from behind drew her attention. A low, guttural chuckle seeped from the space under the door. Something wasn't right. Jenna caught a glimpse of a bony, elongated hand sliding up the crack, fingers twisting like snakes. "Jamie, stay close," Jenna hissed, backing toward the window on the far wall, summoning every ounce of bravery. "We have to break it." As she reached for a nearby chair, the temperature dropped further, her breath visible as a fog in the dim light. Help us, the voices continued, now sounding more desperate, more human. "I'm scared," Jamie whispered again, eyes wide with an innocence that felt so fragile in the face of horror. Jenna edged closer to the window, ready to throw the chair. But just as she raised it, the door rattled violently, the chuckles morphing into a shriek that echoed with despair. They were coming. With a crash, the window shattered, jagged shards flying. "Now!" Jenna shouted, pushing Jamie through the opening, feeling cold air whip against her skin, yet the shadows were clawing, their whispers becoming a deafening roar. Jenna squeezed through last, her body scraping against glass. They landed hard on the cold ground outside, breathless. But as she looked up, fear gripped her anew. The house loomed like a monstrous creature, windows dark, a finale of shadows pulsating, as if it breathed in tandem with Jenna's rising terror. "Jenna?" Jamie's voice was a whisper, tremulous and shaky. "What if it follows us?" She shook her head in defiance, but a question trailed at the edge of her mind. If the shadows followed them out, where could they possibly escape? And deep in the darkness behind them, the whispers festered, coiling tighter, more dangerous than before. It wasn't over. With dread anchoring her heart, Jenna felt the night wrap its icy fingers around her. What horror awaited now that they were outside? "Run," she breathed. But where to? The night was alive, and the shadows hungered. Jenna and Jamie sprinted across the uneven ground, heartbeats pounding in their ears. The air felt thick, almost alive, pressing down on them as they raced away from that dreadful house. Behind them, the whispers grew louder, sinister voices trailing like a horrible echo. "You can't escape, we'll find you." They turned sharply into the dense trees that bordered the property, branches clawing at their clothes like skeletal hands. Jenna's breaths came in quick gasps, and a feeling of despair slithered through her as she glanced back. The house seemed to sway, its windows dark and haunting, the shadows shifting like they were searching. "Where do we go?" Jamie panted, desperation lacing his voice. They had to keep moving, but Jenna had no idea which direction led them to safety. "There." She pointed to a grove of old oaks ahead, their trunks wide and welcoming, like ancient sentinels. "Let us hide there for now." They stumbled into the grove, practically collapsing against the rough bark, panting silently, the tension hanging palpably in the air. The whispers still resonated, shrill and distant, echoing through the trees. Jenna pressed her back against the rough wood, her heart threatening to burst from her chest. As they caught their breath, the calm of the grove felt almost deceiving. "What if they find us?" Jamie's wide eyes brimmed with tears, fear etched across his small face. "We'll stay quiet," Jenna whispered, glancing into the darkness between the trees. "We can't let them know we're here." But silence had a weight of its own, and every shadow seemed to crawl toward them, eager to envelop them in its cold embrace. Jenna could feel the air chill, around them, creeping like ice. The whispers morphed into laughter, unexpected, chilling, as if the shadows found amusement in their fear. A twist of dread coiled in her stomach. "Look!" Jamie pointed, trembling. A flicker of movement stirred in the underbrush. Jenna's heart surged. Was it them? Had they already found a way? Then it came, shuffling and whispers swirling around them. A figure stumbled into view from the darkness, a child, no older than Jamie, wearing tattered clothes and a haunting grin that pierced Jenna's heart. "Help me," the child croaked, eyes an unsettling shade of depthless black. "No, stay back!" Jenna shouted, pushing Jamie behind her, instinctively shielding him. The child's grin widened, revealing teeth too sharp, a twisted mockery of innocence. "Join us!" Suddenly, a chorus of whispers surrounded them, melding into a terrifying reflection of their own fears. "You're not alone," they beckoned, twisting around the trees. "Run!" Jenna screamed, pulling Jamie away from the alluring gaze of the child, leaving behind the haunting plea. They dashed deeper into the grove, branches clawing at their clothes, tearing at their resolve. But the laughter roared around them, mingling with the fading whispers. Jenna felt the shadows dancing just out of sight, their presence like a noose tightening. She wiped the sweat from her brow, forcing herself to focus. "We need to get to the road, there has to be people there." As they fled through the thicket, the trees blurred into dark, suffocating figures. Just when they thought they had gained distance, a frigid wind rushed over them, sweeping shadows in a violent surge. "Look!" Jamie cried. In the clearing ahead, glowing faintly against the night, was what looked like an old car, rusted and derelict. Jenna felt a wave of hope flood her veins. "Maybe it still works." "Do you think they see us?" Jamie questioned, his voice rife with panic. She turned back, heart skipping a beat. The shadows gathered at the tree line, swirling with a hungry fervor. There was no time to waste. "We have to go. Now!" They bolted for the car, breaths jagged and frantic. Jenna reached for the door, wrenched it open, and shoved Jamie inside. She glanced behind them, and what she saw sent a chill down her spine. Figures emerged from the darkness, faceless silhouettes spilling forth like monsters unleashed. "Start! Please start!" she yelled, scrambling into the driver's seat. Her fingers fumbled over the wheel, desperately searching for the keys. Just then, a soft tapping came from the window. Jenna froze, heart in her throat. The child with the twisted smile appeared, now standing outside the car, beckoning her with a crooked finger. "Join us!" Behold, panic surged. The whispers crescendoed, drowning out her thoughts. "Jenna, do something!" Jamie cried, eyes wide with terror. "Hold on!" she yelled, turning the ignition. The engine coughed, hesitated, then roared to life. As Jenna slammed the gear into drive, the shadows lunged forward, reaching for the car. She pressed the gas, feeling the tires spin against the gravel as they tore away. But in the rearview mirror, the shapes fractured and distorted, shifting like smoke. Are they coming?" Jamie gasped, straining to look back. "We have to go faster!" Jenna shouted, fear clawing at her throat. But deep down, a grim realization sank in. What if they could follow them into the light? The road stretched ahead, illuminated dimly by the headlights, but behind them, the shadows were still gathering, relentless and hungry. What would it take to break free from their grasp? And as they sped away from the nightmare, Jenna couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't out of danger yet. The engine roared angrily beneath them as Jenna gripped the wheel, heart racing like the pounding of thunder. The road was uneven, littered with cracks that threatened to swallow them whole at any moment. Jamie's breathing quickened next to her, the weight of their escape pressing down with an intensity that made the air feel electric. "Do you think we lost them?" he asked, glancing nervously out the window, still haunted by that twisted child and the promises of darkness lingering in the air. "I don't know," Jenna admitted, keeping her eyes fixed on the winding path before them. She felt sweat trickling down her back, their previous sense of safety already slipping through her fingers like sand. Glancing in the rearview mirror, she caught a glimpse of the gathering shapes, a mass of shadows that twisted and turned. Panic clawed up her throat. "Keep your eyes forward," she snapped, wishing she could take his fear away. The whispers began to seep through the heavy silence of the night, chilling her bones. "You can't run, you belong to us," they taunted, an eerie echo that curled around each word. Jenna's stomach twisted, fighting the urge to look back again. Suddenly, the headlights flickered, dimmed, and with it, the shadows seemed to gain ground. "Come on! Stay with me!" she urged the car, her voice trembling on the edges of hysteria. The gas pedal sank deeper beneath her foot, willing the car to push forward, to escape the haunted weight of their pursuers. Then, out of the darkness, a figure darted across the road, a blur of limbs and shadows. Jenna slammed the brakes, the tires screeching in protest. "What the?" A girl, no older than Jamie, appeared in their headlights, wild-eyed and disheveled, her mouth moving as if screaming for help. Panic surged through Jenna again, and instinct took over. "Get down!" she yelled, flipping the steering wheel hard to the right. The car swerved violently, careening off the gravel. The world outside folded in on them, dark and twisted, like the branches of the cursed grove they had just escaped. The impact was jarring, bones rattling as the car came to a stop against a lone tree. "Jenna!" Jamie cried, fear echoing in the confines of the vehicle. "We're okay," she reassured him, inhaling deeply to steady her shaking hands. "Just hold on." But the whispers had shifted, growing louder, more demanding, echoing through the twisted branches around them. "Join us," they sighed, dripping with malice. Frantically checking that Jamie was still all right, Jenna scrambled for the door, lungs burning with urgency. "We need to move! Now!" As they stumbled out onto the forest floor, the rustling leaves filled her ear, merging with that haunting laughter. "Where do we go?" Jamie whimpered, glancing at the darkness surrounding them, where those shapes loomed ever closer. "Follow me!" Jenna shouted, sprinting past the car, deeper into the tangled underbrush, where the suffocating grasp of the trees pressed in like caged nightmares. The forest consumed them, a storm of shadows and whispers swirling around, blurring the lines between what was real and what was tea. They ducked and weaved, trying to evade the encroaching darkness. But as they ran, the whispers shifted again, forming words that seemed eerily familiar. "She let us and she let us stay." Jenna froze, her heart pounding like a war drum. "What does that mean?" she began to ask, but then the air grew thick, as if the very forest was listening. "Jenna!" Jamie's voice broke through the suffocating haze of confusion. What if it's true?" Before she could respond, a chilling breeze swept through the trees, carrying a sudden silence that was suffocating. Jenna felt a shifting presence, as the shadows spiraled into forms she thought she wouldn't have to see again. Fear gripped her heart, a cold that settled deep within her. "What if we can't get out?" Jamie's voice trembled, the bleak realization settling in around them like darkness encroaching at twilight. Jenna grabbed his hand, determination surging through her veins. "We will find a way." But just as she spoke, the trees parted, revealing a narrow path winding toward a glow in the distance. Was it the light they had hoped for, or another trap? The glow pulsated, beckoning like a siren's call. The shadows seemed to hover at the edges, waiting, watching. Jenna hesitated for a moment, the uneasy weight of their choice pressing upon her. "Do we go forward?" she whispered, wrestling with the gnawing dread. But the laughter returned, louder this time, echoing through the trees. "Join us, it's too late." The question hung in the air. Would they choose the unknown light or venture further into the darkness that seemed to stretch infinitely? Jenna felt the shadows inch closer, a decision hovering at the edge of her consciousness, one that could seal their fate. As they stood there, hearts racing, the whispers crescendoed, and Jenna knew that whatever happened next would change everything. Would they step into the light, or would the darkness claim them? Jenna stood at the edge of the path, feeling the pull of the glowing light in the distance. It was inviting, almost a promise, a spark of hope amidst the suffocating dark. Yet the whispers swirled around her like a tempest, taunting and menacing, wrapping around her throat like a vice. "It's too late, you can't escape." She clenched Jamie's hand tighter, panic gnawing at her insides. They had to make a choice. Would the light lead them to safety or plunge them deeper into the shadows' clutches? With shadows creeping closer, Jenna's heart raced. Stay close, she urged Jamie, pulling him toward the warm glow, the flickers of light beckoning them forward. The forest darkened with every step they took, the whispers escalating into frantic calls, a symphony of fear. Join us, we need you, Jenna. Jamie's voice broke through the chaos, trembling with uncertainty. What if it's a trick? It's better than what's behind us, she cried back, glancing nervously over her shoulder. The shadows rippled and writhed, but she pushed forward, desperate for a shred of hope. As they approached the light, the air shifted, humming with an energy that sent chills coursing down Jenna's spine. There was no turning back now, she had to trust her instincts. They entered a clearing, the light radiated from an old, gnarled tree at its center, its bark shimmering with an otherworldly glow, almost alive. What is this place? Jamie whispered, all replacing fear momentarily. I don't know, she whispered back. But it must be safe. But safe never felt so precarious. As they crossed the threshold into the glow, Jenna felt a slight tugging at her heart. The whispers intensified, pulsing like a wild heartbeat. Stay with us, you belong here, join us. No, Jenna shouted, clutching Jamie's hand desperately. We're not part of you. The light flickered, dimming as if responding to her defiance. Jamie pulled away from her grasp, eyes widening in horror. Jenna, don't! Instinctively, Jenna lunged forward to grab him, but it felt like hitting a wall as shadows erupted from the tree, grabbing at her with icy tendrils. Help us, echoed even louder, merging with Jamie's voice, pleading and filled with despair. Run! Jenna screamed, her heart hammering. She wrenched Jamie closer, desperately trying to break through the web of darkness that wrapped around them. He stumbled, fear glistening in his eyes. Jenna! They barreled through the treacherous light, abruptly back into the woodland shadows. Stay close. Keep moving! Jenna barked, leading them through the chaos, branches snapping underfoot, twisted roots snatching at their heels. Suddenly, an enormous shadow loomed ahead, unfurling like a monstrous creature emerging from its lair. Join us, it growled, chilling Jenna to her core. The apparition held a twisted resemblance to the children, their hollow eyes a mirror of the darkness she fought so hard against. Stay, you cannot escape, no. We're not yours! Jenna shouted, the words tearing from her throat. With every ounce of her strength, she hurled herself toward that path again, dragging a resisting Jamie behind her. The glow seemed to pulse in rhythm with their racing hearts, and eerily, the shadows began to recede. You're leaving? Another piercing voice fluttered through the air, dripping with disdain. The malevolence crawled into Jenna's veins, stinging her resolve, but she couldn't stop. They had to break free. Their feet pounded against the earth, every ounce of Jenna's being surged with adrenaline. This way! She yelled, veering to the right, the glow intensifying with every step they took. The shadows shrieked in anger, echoing through the trees like banshees lamenting their loss. Bursting into the clearing, the light enveloped them, washing away the cold grasp of fear that filled her heart. Stars burst overhead, bright and shining. The moon hung low, illuminating the safe haven that now was theirs. Keep running! Jenna urged, feeling the warmth of the light surrounding them wash away the chill. But the weight of the darkness clawed at her, the remnants of their whispers still simmering at the edges of her thoughts. Help us, echoed a soft voice behind them, a final plea reaching out like fingers in the dark. No! Jenna roared, conviction blazing through her soul. The shadows behind them melted, dissipating into a swirl of nothingness. We're free! With one final look back, she saw the silhouettes retreating into the forest, powerless against the light. The battle was fierce, but they had made it, pulled from the pit of despair. Together, they turned to the path ahead, the whispers fading into the cool night, replaced by the rustle of leaves and the promise of dawn. Jenna, did we really escape? Jamie asked, voice shaky but filled with newfound resilience. Yes, she breathed, relief washing over her like a cleansing tide. We did. As they walked, hand in hand, dawn broke on the horizon, chasing away the remnants of night, illuminating their way home. Though shadows may linger on the periphery, Jenna had conquered this game. But as a shiver went down her spine, she couldn't shake the feeling that the night was still alive, and the journey was far from over. Remember, if you enjoyed this spine-chilling tale, you need to subscribe now to join us for more exclusive stories like this. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm, and flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the ending. Don't wait even one more second. Share this video with at least 5 friends who need to experience this conclusion. Your support is what keeps the darkness at bay.